Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making a wooden Inukshuk. So Inukshuk, literally translated, means in the likeness of a human. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making these. And in our Newfoundland Inspired Projects, this will be the next one in our series. Now, these are used all over Canada and in different parts of the world, and they can mean a multitude of different things depending on where they're placed, how they are placed, and the reasons that they are placed. It's quite an interesting thing. If you want to look it up, check it out. It's got a lot of interesting little facts. But we're going to make a decorative one today here on the show. And it all starts off with a pattern that I've put together to use on your scroll saw, bandsaw, or to cut by hand. So let's head over to the bench and have a look what I've got going on. Well, this pattern that I have created is actually a two-page pattern. One of them is your assembly layout of your Inukshuk, while the other one is the pattern for cutting your pieces. Now, there's several ways that you can do this, guys. You can trace these out. You can make a template if you're going to make multiple pieces, or you can use just some adhesive spray and apply them directly to your stock. And that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to actually cover my stock in some masking tape first, and then using some adhesive, some spray adhesive, we're going to apply our patterns. Now, in order to make this as interesting as you can and to sort of mimic different stones, you want to choose different species for these pieces. They will all be cut from 1/2-inch thick stock. So try to mix it up if you can. It's a great way to use up some scrap pieces, but 1/2-inch thick stock, and as I said, use as many different species as you can get your hands on. If not, you can stain them different colors. You also need a piece for the base. Now the base is going to be 3/4 of an inch thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the rack. I'm going to choose some different species of 1/2-inch thick and get my piece for my base. And I am going to adhere all of my patterns to my stock. Well, just one thing I'd like to point out is that here, when pinning them to my spray board, I have like species with like the mahogany, mahogany, mahogany. It just makes it a little easier when placing it on the stock. As well, though, I have labeled what species I'm going to use for each one and marked the direction of the grain that I want on each one of these. And guys, I honestly think that before this pattern is released and uploaded to the website, I will be adding grain arrows or grain direction arrows to the pattern. It's just one less step for you to do. So now that we have all of these attached to our stock, we can head over to the scroll saw at this point in time. Well, over here at the scroll saw, we have a number 7 blade installed. And the first thing we're going to cut is the base out of the 3/4 inch thick, in my case, walnut. Guys, before I get into the scrolling, I just want to point out how important it is to have a dust mask on while you're scrolling. The scroll saw gets neglected so much for dust control, both having dust collection attached to it and as well wearing your PPE. And guys, while base camp masks are not a sponsor of today's show, I don't want to give that impression. I have no problem promoting good safety gear, and I love these masks. They're very comfortable, they're very soft. I'm going to put the link to them below if you're interested, but I would suggest getting some kind of dust mask on while you're scrolling. So guys, with that being said, I'm going to get off my high horse now, get off my pedestal, and I'm going to cut this base. Now, this is a very forgiving scrolling. You do not have to follow the lines perfectly. Normally, I promote, if you need the perfect cut, to cut outside the lines if you're not comfortable with your levels of control, and then sanding up to the lines. In this case, I'm just going to cut it straight onto the lines the best I can. And it's not that imperative because we need to do some shaping later on. So we're going to get this base cut, and then we're going to move on to some of our other pieces. And that would be our base cut. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Do I care? Absolutely not. Guys, we have all of our other species here, our walnut, our cherry, our mahogany, and our maple. we're going to cut all of these pieces. Again, over the scroll saw, you can use a bandsaw, you can cut them by hand with a coping saw if you like, but we're going to get them all cut. Now we can use that same number 7 blade if we wish, since most of this here is hardwood, or you could probably drop it down to a number 3 if you wish. But I'm going to keep the number 7 just because it's installed. It's a bit of an aggressive cut for me, but that's okay. We're going to get it done. So I'm going to get all of these pieces finished and cut, and I'm going to show you what to do with this next. Well, with all our pieces cut, we're now going to need our assembly drawing. And what we're going to do is place all of our pieces on top of our assembly drawing, just like this. And once we get them all placed, we need to mark a few of the holes that are listed here. So if we look at our assembly drawing, we can see that I have 1/4 inch wide dotted lines listed on the pattern. Guys, these denote the holes for the dowels that will assist us in the assembly. But I'm going to change this. I don't want a 1/4 inch diameter hole. In fact, I'm going to change it to 1/8 of an inch. So what I'm going to do is with each one of our pieces, I'm just going to carefully mark the center of our assembly hole on each piece. And now guys, this is not imperative. It doesn't have to be perfect. So we're just going to mark it here just like this. I was going to do a through hole here and put 1 dowel, but I think changing this to 1/8 of an inch, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use pieces of dowel just to help it align a little better. So we're going to mark all of these dowel holes, and once we get that done, we're going to head over to the drill press. Well, over here at the drill press, I have a 1/8 diameter drill bit installed here in the chuck. And guys, all we're going to do is, here's our piece. In this case, it's cherry. I've marked the placement of our hole. I've transferred that to the end of our piece. I have set my fence so that this is going to strike in the middle of our piece at a 1/4 inch. And guys, it's not really rocket science. I'm going to line it up here so that our marks are pretty much square to our table. And I'm just going to drill a hole, maybe a 1/4 of an inch deep, not much, just enough to allow our dowels to assist us in our assembly. Now guys, we are going to drill these pieces in each one of the holes that we marked. Well, for those of you who are new to scrolling or new to the channel, you may be wondering why we even bothered with the masking tape. Guys, the thing is, spray adhesive leaves residue on the stock, and while you can clean it up, and in some cases it's actually preferable to glue the pattern right to your wood, in this case for quick little small pieces like this, that masking tape goes a long way to making it easy to peel your pattern off of your stock without leaving any gluey residue on there. So it makes cleanup a whole lot easier. So at this point now, we're going to peel off all of our patterns, and then we're going to head over to the oscillating drum sander. Well, it's now time to shape all of our pieces, and guys, this is not rocket science. You can put this together with all the square edges of your cut stock the way it is if you want, if that is your preference, but I do not want to do that. I want mine to be shaped a little more like rocks. So using the oscillating drum sander, I am going to shape each one of my pieces, rounding the edges, giving it a little bit of form, a little bit of character. And you can use an oscillating drum, you can use your belt sander, you can sand it by hand, however you want to do it, or you can just leave them the way they are, just as square edges. That works as well. But we're going to get all of these shaped up, including the base. And once we get the base done, there's just a couple more holes that we need to drill. But before we can do that, we're going to assemble our Inukshuk using some 1/8 dowels. And once you're happy with the general shaping of these, we're going to take some 180 grit sandpaper and we're just going to clean them up. You know, take out any of the sanding marks, finish rounding them off, make them look finished, make them look complete. And then we'll hit them with a little bit of 220 grit just to finish them off completely. Well, at this point, it's time for assembly. And guys, I just have a bunch of little pieces of 1/8 diameter dowel. I didn't even measure them. I just cut them. They're probably 1/2 inch long. And we're just going to glue a piece of dowel into each one of our holes here and then line it up with its mating hole using our assembly drawing as a base. And we're using the flat surface of our bench to make sure that everything aligns. So I would suggest doing a dry fit to make sure that your dowels are of an appropriate size for this as far as their length, because we did not do any kind of measuring for our depth of holes or anything like that. So you want to make sure that everything is going to line up and work out. And so far, so good. So I'm going to get this glued together and then we can move on from there with the installation of our base. Okay, and with our Inukshuk glued together, all we need to do now for the base is I have the two 1/8 diameter dowels sticking out the bottom of his legs. We're going to line him up here on the base however we see fit. There's no real, rhyme or reason. You can put it wherever you like. And we're just going to mark where those dowels go. We'll take this over to the drill press. We're going to drill a couple of stopped 1/8 diameter inch holes, and then we can mount our Inukshuk into our base. And the very last step here that I want to do is to apply a good coating of Danish oil. And guys, this is going to bring out the natural colors of the woods. Look at that mahogany there, how that just deepened, darkened, makes it so much richer. So we can coat this with Danish oil. You can apply some varnish if you like. I might go a satin varnish on this when the oil is done. I'm not sure, but at least for now, the Danish oil is going to bring out those natural colors of the maple and the cherry and the mahogany, and it's going to give this thing a ton of character, and it's going to look great. And there you have it, a wooden Inukshuk. Guys, the third in our series of Newfoundland Inspired Projects. This project is absolutely fantastic, and it's fantastic for several reasons. Number one, the way I designed it for accessibility. Regardless of the tools that you have in your shop, this is a project that is available to you. Whether you have a scroll saw or not, if you have a bandsaw, if you have a small fret saw, even if all you have is a sander, you can still do this project. You can rough cut it with whatever hand tool you have and then sand it using a belt sander. Guys, this is not a project that needs a lot of tools, and that's the first reason that makes it fantastic. The second reason is I designed it to be able to use up scrap. You don't need a lot of material for this. To make these Inukshuks, you just need a small amount of 1/2 inch thick stock of different species, and they're small little pieces. So you don't need a large amount of stock in order to make one of these. The entire project, I think, stands something like 6 and 6 3/4 inches tall, something like that. So it's a small, fun project. The other thing that makes it great is it's quick. It is so quick. It's a fun way to spend a couple hours at the scroll saw or what have you, and then sanding, shaping, drilling, putting it together. But it's a quick and easy and fun project to be able to work on. And the last reason that makes this fantastic is because you don't need all the extra species. If all you have is pine, or if all you have is maple, then make it out of maple or pine and then stain the pieces if you want different colors. Heck, paint them. Do whatever you want to do. It is very forgiving. It allows you to use some artistic ability and paint it, stain it, assemble it however you wish. Your holes don't have to be perfect for the 1/8 dowel. Your cutting doesn't have to be perfect. Your sanding doesn't have to be perfect. The whole thing can be imperfect, and the more imperfect it is, the more perfect it is, if that makes any sense. So don't get frustrated or discouraged from this one, because it is a load of fun and it's very accessible to everybody. Now guys, those 1/4 inch holes for assembly that I show on the original plan, I kind of changed those up while building it because I realized that with shaping these pieces with 1/2 inch thick stock, it doesn't allow for enough outside material, outside of the 1/4 inch holes, to shape these properly and not have those dowels show. So I shrunk it down to 1/8 of an inch. And by the time this show airs, I will have revamped this pattern to reflect that. So the pattern that you download may look a little different from the one I've shown you here today. So now, speaking of the download, guys, if you don't want this thing to be as large as what it is, just print it at a different percentage. Instead of printing at 100%, if you just want a little 3-inch Inukshuk, then drop it down to 50%. And that's what you end up with, a little 3-inch Inukshuk. And the 1/2 inch could still stay. It just means that your rocks, your wooden rocks, are just a little bigger. Guys, mix it up. Mix up your species. Mix up your size. Play with different thicknesses. It doesn't have to be 1/2 inch. Maybe make it 3/4 to make the rocks a little bulkier instead of the thinner ones that I've done here today. It doesn't matter what you do to it. It doesn't matter how you make it. It doesn't matter the methods that you use. What matters is that you try it. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. These Newfoundland Inspired Projects have been a lot of fun. I've really been enjoying playing with these. And this one, you know what? It doesn't really have any inspiration from a specific place in Newfoundland, but I did see quite a few of these throughout the gift shops as my wife and I were traveling around to different towns on the island. And I thought, you know what? Hey, I can make one of those. So if you want the pattern for this, guys, it's as simple as visiting my website, cutabovewoodworkings.com. You click on the free pattern section and it's right there for the taking, as well as this video if you can't remember. That would be your source for the patterns and for the tutorial videos. So cutabovewoodworkings.com, check it out and download your pattern for free. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. If you haven't already, if you found any part of today's show fun, informative, likable, what have you, why not like and subscribe to the channel? We have an amazing audience base, and I'm hoping that you're going to consider becoming a part of that. Guys, I want to thank you again for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed today's project in the series. I hope you're going to give this one a try for yourself. I hope you're going to mix it up and make it your own and add your own little pieces to it, or maybe your own little touch and your own little design. But more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.